Thank you.
Thank you so much for the beautiful gift of the flute. Wonderful. So, welcome to Satsang, everyone. We'll begin with a short meditation. So just find a position that is comfortable for you. All that really matters is you're stable. You're balanced. And that your breath can flow freely. Allow the awareness to pull from the outer world to the inner world. Allow all of the organs of sensation and perception that are usually focused outward. Feel yourself drawing them in. Bring the awareness to the breath. Don't try to change it. Don't manipulate it. Just allow your awareness to merge with the breath. On the exhalations, as you exhale, allow yourself to let go. Let go of the masks that you wear. Let go of the roles that you play. Let go of the identities. Let go of the personalities. Let go of all of that which is not self. Just breathe it out. Let go of the responsibilities. Let go of the histories. With each exhalation, let go and allow yourself to drop deeper and deeper into the core of yourself. Sounds may come, sensations may come, thoughts may come. Don't worry about them, but don't allow your attention to be diverted by them or to get hooked into them. Rather, just let them blow across your consciousness. Like wispy clouds blow across a blue sky on a windy day. And just keep bringing the awareness back to your breath. Freer and freer with each exhalation. Let go of the masks. Let go of the roles. Let go of the identities. Sinking deeper and deeper into the spaciousness inside. That source of light, of love, of peace. Slowly and gently bring the palms of your hands together at chest level and rub them gently against each other. Cup your hands over your closed eyes. Gently open your eyes into the palms of your hands and lower your hands. So we'll start start with a question that has come in advance, and then open it up to any questions that anyone here may have. I've done a lot of personal work to get to where I am today in my life. Yet sometimes I feel attached to the past and the story. How do I let it go? So, this is a piece also of the meditation that we were just doing. Because for so many of us, that which keeps us stuck is not actually something in the outer world. Very few of us are actually prisoners. Actually prisoners in someone's jail that someone else has a key to. Very few of us are in that circumstance. For most of us, the jail we're in is a jail of our own mind. Everything in the outer world is free. Very few of us are living in situations, societies, regimes in which our freedom is restricted, in which there are things that we can't do, we are not permitted to do. And yet, most of us live our lives stuck. Can't do this, can't do that, I am like this, I am like that, this is my story, I'm a victim of this, I'm a victim of that. That's not possible for me, that's not possible for me. And it's the mind. It's the mind that's actually the jailer, nothing else. And so a really, really important aspect of spiritual practice is, how do I break free of that? It's not about denial. It's not about pretending things are different. It's actually about recognizing, regardless of what's happened, regardless of what I know how to do, don't know how to do, how much money is in my bank account, the color of my skin, the gender I may be, the educational background I have or don't have, regardless of any of that, I'm the one making the choices for my life. I'm the one creating my experience here on planet Earth. But we get very stuck. I remember when I first came to India, now 22 and a half years ago, I asked Puja Swamiji. He used to give these open darshan times. Twice a day he had open darshan. And could go and sit, and it was exactly an hour though. I mean, when the hour was up, he was gone. And so for the first many times, the people who were there and the questions that they had lasted beyond the hour of the time. But after some time, I opened my eyes. I used to just close my eyes and listen. I didn't speak Hindi, which was the language it was taking place mostly in. And I would just close my eyes and be in the presence. And I opened my eyes one day, and he's looking at me, and he says, "Yes." And everybody had asked their questions and had gone. And so I asked him about fear. Fear was something that I used to struggle a lot with. And he said to me, "You fear because you don't trust." And I said, okay. And I then gave him my whole story. I was only 25, but I already had a really good story. A lot had happened in 25 years. And good story, true story. And it was this type of story that for most of my 25 years would get lots of people to say, oh my God, oh wow. As I said, a good story. And in my mind, a good story of why I fear, why I don't trust. And he looks at me absolutely matter-of-factly, no judgment, no, just very matter-of-factly, and he says, are you going to take this to the grave with you? I was 25. No, of course not, of course not. And he said, so are you going to give it up a day before you die? It's like, no. He said, how about a week before you die? Maybe a month before you die? And first I thought, oh my God, is he saying I'm going to die soon? I mean, is this a premonition that very soon I'm going to die? And I said, no, Swamiji, I'm working on it. I really would hope I can give it up sooner than that. And he looks at me and he says, you're waiting for someone to draw the line for you. He said, no one will. And I had known him at this point maybe 3 days. This was my first actual conversation with him. He said, no one will draw that line for you. He said, it's up to you. You can draw it on your deathbed. You can draw it a day before you die, a week before you die, a month before you die. Or, he said, you can draw it tonight. I was like, tonight? And he said, yeah. He said, we have this beautiful ceremony called the Arti. And he said, come to the Arti. And he said, and after the Arti, he said, I'll tell them to give you the oil lamp so that you can wave it also. And then he said, and after the Arti, I want you to stand in Ganga. And I want you to give. Give your pain, give your fear, give that whole story. Give it to Ganga. And she will take it. And I walked out, and I'm embarrassed to admit, but in service of full truth, which is what the word Satsang means, in the presence of truth. But it's embarrassing to admit, nonetheless. I spent most of that day, I used to keep a journal. And my journal entries from that day are the most arrogant, Western, academic, know-it-all. And they say things like, just give it to the river. He says I should just give it to the river, as though somehow it were an apple core. And I spent most of that day thinking how very sweet, how very quaint, but how very overly simplistic this solution was. I mean, I was a PhD student in psychology. There was a process to things. You spent, years in depth. You went through. We had systems and processes for dealing with our stuff. You didn't just give them to a river. And so that was what most of my day was spent thinking. And at some point, late afternoon, in a moment that I will be truly, eternally grateful for, I had a moment of clarity. And the moment of clarity related back to me being on the airplane to India, and I won't go into that whole story now, many of you know it, but I had taken a vow on the plane, and the vow was that I was going to keep my heart open, because I didn't know why I was coming to India, and that if I didn't keep my heart open, I was just going to go back to California and not travel around India with a closed heart. And sometime late that afternoon, I had a moment of clarity in which I thought, this is silly. Here you are, thousands of miles from home. You've just been given an instruction that seems absolutely crazy by every standard that you understand. By a man with long hair and a long beard and wearing orange robes in a city that you had never heard of a week ago. And as crazy as the entire piece seems, maybe this is what it's all about. And I took a vow in that moment, and the vow was simply that I would do it sincerely. I still had no expectation at all that anything was going to happen. In fact, I was full of doubt that anything would happen. I was pretty sure that nothing would happen. But I made a commitment to sincerity, and that was all it was. I had already, about 10 days prior at that point, had the incredible spiritual experience that made me stay back anyway, standing on the banks of Ganga. So I already loved Ganga very deeply and very dearly and knew there was a power here. And I made a commitment to that truth, just that I would do it sincerely. And I did. And without taking up all of this evening on that particular question, the bottom line was, it worked. It took a long time. I spent many, many, many minutes crying into the river. But ultimately, when I gave it, she took it. And I then, again in another moment that is embarrassing to mention, but in service of truth, there it is, I spent the next many weeks trying to bring it back. Which brings us onto a topic we were talking about last night when someone asked about why is it so hard to open ourselves to happiness. I literally spent weeks thinking, well, that couldn't really have gone away. I must have just suppressed it or repressed it or denied it, or, I've done something to it. I was able to pathologize an incredibly deep spiritual experience because that's what I was trained to do. And only when, after not only weeks, but months and then years, I no longer was able to convince myself that it was actually in some suppressed corner of my brain, but actually that it had been carried away, that it had been healed. And the reason that I share this personal story with this question is, a couple of nights ago, I made a comment about us being attached to our stories and sort of addicted to our dramas. And many of us are, and I certainly was. And the idea of being able to be free of our story is something that many of us don't think is possible. I am a victim of this. I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a child of an alcoholic, or I'm both, or I'm the one who always gets the short end of the stick. I always get left out. I always get left behind. I'm always the one chosen against. I'm the ugly one. I'm the stupid one. And interestingly, it also works the other way. And it's just as insidious. I'm the beautiful one. I'm the smart one. I'm the one everyone loves. The ego's pull on us with our dramas is not only in the negative. The stories we're attached to are just as damaging when they're positive as when they're negative, because we are just as boxed by them. It's just the golden cage rather than the iron cage. And ultimately the point is, how can I be free of that? How can I recognize that I'm not my identity? I have a role. I play a role. But it's not me. And it's just a matter, literally, of giving it up. And the last piece that I would mention on this is, it's important to ask yourself, if you find that you're really having a hard time letting it go, ask yourself, well, what is it serving me? In what way is living in this box serving me? What plate of my life am I not stepping up to? Because I'm attached to this story of myself as this victim, or the child of that, or in the jail of that, with the problem of this, the ailment of that. In what way does that identity serve me? How is it protecting me from having to have the courage to actually live and be the divine being I am? Because if I can hide behind, oh, well, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, I'm a child of an addict, I had this happened to me, that happened to me. If I can hide behind that, I can go through most of my life without actually ever having to realize the incredibleness of the presence of God within me. But we've then missed the entire point. And so you have to have the courage. But the beautiful aspect of the word courage is the root of it, the etymology of courage, comes not from the root of bravery, which most of us associate them as synonyms, courage and bravery, but they're actually not. Bravery comes from the concept of being protected. So armored, shielded, right? I'm brave because I've got this 4 inches of metal between you and me. I'm brave because I've got a helmet of metal, I've got a shield, I've got a sword, I've got 20 inches of a sharp metal point between us. Yeah, I can be brave. Courage is the opposite. Courage comes from the root of an open heart. It's the same root as the word cœur, heart in French. So you have to have the open-hearted faith to let go of that which isn't true and open yourself up to the presence of that which is. And that's what happens when we let go. That's when grace flows in. It's like my favorite story of the man who goes in search of the guru. And some of you have probably heard me tell this, but who goes in search of the guru, and he decides, I'm ready for enlightenment, I need enlightenment. And he finally gets to this enlightened guru sitting in the cave on the top of the mountain, and he says to the guru, I'm ready for enlightenment. Here's what I've learned, here's what I've studied, here's what I've done, here's what my problems are, here's my challenges. And the guru says to him, have a cup of tea. And the man says, tea? I didn't come for tea, I came for enlightenment. The guru says, have a cup of tea. So of course the man's not going to disobey him, and he sits, and the guru goes in the back of the cave, and he comes back with a teapot and 2 cups, and he puts the cups down. And he starts pouring, and he pours and he pours, and the cup is now overflowing, and it's spilling, and the tea is spilling all over the ground. And the man says, stop. What are you doing? The cup is full. And the guru puts down the teacup, and he says, your mind is just like this cup. You are so full of who you think you are and what you think you need that there's no room for me to give you anything. Just like I can't pour you more tea till you drink what's in this cup, I cannot give you anything until you let go of some of what you think you know. some of who you think you are, some of what you think you need. And so a lot of us pray. We pray for grace. We pray for the presence of God in our lives, whatever that means to us. But we walk around so full of all of these identities, of all of these stories, of all of these reasons and histories and stuff. What we think we need. Who we think we are. What we think we have to do. But there isn't any room for grace to flow in our life. And so we let go of the story out of courage, out of the open heart, because we know that the presence of grace is more valuable than any story I could be holding on to. That the presence of grace is what I'm here for. But I have to let go of my story first. Before taking any of the other ones that have come in advance, I'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has. Yes.
My question is towards a common problem right now within teenagers or the younger generation, which is depression. So I have a niece who's about 18 years old. She's in the university and she's studying psychology. And she's active when it comes to school and office, but I read a lot of posts from her in social media saying that she's depressed, I want to kill myself, and I'm trying to fight it, but I cannot. So I'm just being in the experience of an ashram or coming here is very useful for us, but it's not really, you cannot really send somebody to experience it. But how can we try to help them? How can we try to explain to them the importance of being in touch with yourself and help them?
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, depression has become an epidemic. There's a couple of pieces to this, and I want to make sure to touch on all of them. On the first, most logistic level, most, not superficial level, but most physical, logistic level, she needs to get help. Anybody who actually is having thoughts of suicide, yes, we'll work with her depression. I'll come to that in a moment, of ways to understand, ways to explain. But she actually needs help immediately. And so if someone is putting out there that they are actually thinking about suicide, that's a conversation that needs to take place immediately. There's a lot of different types of help that can be given, but she really needs to be protected. She needs, because the problem is, if she commits suicide, there's no longer a cure for her depression. In order to help her, we have to make sure she stays alive.
Yes, she has help.
Okay, good.
Being given medication.
Wonderful. Okay, perfect. Good. I was going to suggest that might be a possibility. So, and this is important, and I'm just going to digress for a moment here. In the spiritual world, there's a lot of sense of, oh, I don't want to take medicine. I don't, and a lot of people suffering from depression, I don't want to medicate it. It's all individual circumstances, of course. But if you had diabetes and your internal organs were not properly processing sugar and insulin and the balance of them, Yes, you would change your diet. Yes, you'd have to exercise. But yes, you might also have to take something medical to keep you alive long enough that the exercise and the diet change, which don't work overnight, could actually kick in. And in the same way, having to temporarily go on medicine to rebalance chemicals in the brain, to keep us alive and functional and able to get out of bed long enough to actually do the work that I need to do, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing to feel bad about, and there's nothing to feel like a failure about. And that's a really important thing to realize. I don't want to go too much into the neurology science of that. I want to come back to this, but just it's really important to mention, because whatever tools we have to keep us able to function so that we can actually heal and come to our highest purpose, we need to use them. So going back to her specifically, so depression has become an epidemic, especially among the youth. And one of the reasons for this is it's always been an issue, but it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse because the pressure to perform, the pressure to have it figured out is increasing and increasing and increasing. And we, of course, have to look at ourselves as parents, as mentors, as relatives, as teachers. Too tragically these days, children are taught that their value is based on what they do, not who they are. You got an A? Oh, great, you are mama's, best boy. You're dad's champ. Whatever words we may use in our house. You got the A, you were the best in the class. Let's go out for pizza. Let's go out for ice cream. Let's celebrate you. All of this love, all of this appreciation, based on what you've done. You failed. You didn't do well. Suddenly, not only do you not get the perks, but now mom and dad are disappointed. They're sad. That love has actually withdrawn. Where there were open arms and hugs and kisses and laps to sit on and ice cream to go for when we perform, the child who doesn't do well frequently ends up alone in his room. Go to your room. And it's, of course, not just about school, it's about everything. Your room is a mess. You're a slob, you're stupid, you're this, you're that. Our whole sense of worth, from the time we're very young, gets rooted in what we do, not who we are. And the problem with that is we can't all do everything. We're not all going to be good at everything. And then in school, teachers who, of course, are just people going through their own karmic package with their own toolbox of life, say things to students who don't do well, like, you are stupid. You are never going to be anything. You're bad. And again, give us this sense of, I am my grades. I am my test scores. I am my number, my ranking in my class. My entire sense of worthiness. But school also at that age does something else. It's not just how I do in school. It's, does someone want to dance with me at the school dance? Who do I eat lunch with? Who invites me to their parties? So tragically, it's not even just how I'm doing in school. It's the whole aspect of my life. Acceptance based on the color of your skin, how much money your parents make, what area of town your house is, do you have a tennis court, a swimming pool, are you beautiful, are you not beautiful, are you fat, are you thin? Are you good in sports, are you not good in sports, do you wear glasses, do you not? All of this stuff becomes the markers of my value as a being on earth. And that's a lot. That's a lot. But this is the stuff that has been going on, of course, for many, many, many generations. It's getting worse, but it's been going on for a while. What's happened recently that I think has made the depression epidemic even worse is social media. It's hard enough to figure out who I am, just oneself. I'm an athlete. I'm an academic. I'm a this, I'm a that, right? Like, which group do I eat lunch with? What am I going to major in college? I mean, just these little aspects of identity are hard enough. Not having to curate an entire online self. The amount of time and energy that the youth of today spend literally curating and then tweaking and retweaking an entire online self that becomes based on likes, comments, followers, friends. It's bad enough to be judged just based on what you look like and the 5-10 people around you. Now it's all about the whole online world. And the dilemma with this, aside from the obvious, is the picture that gets painted on social media is always, or 99% of the time, just the light side, right? So people are only posting pictures of the good stuff, right? Here I am having a ball and, selfie picture, here it is, me, and they may be depressed. They may be suffering. But there's such a push, such a pressure to appear perfect on social media. I mean, I literally know people who have perfected the act of how to suck in their cheeks enough so that they actually look not pudgy but thin. I mean, there's literally, techniques that people use of how to take selfies at what angle. I was taking a picture with someone the other day, and she wanted a picture, and somebody was taking the picture of us, and he was taking it kind of straight on, and she said, no, you have to take it from up, take it from up, take it from up. And I was like, why? And she said, because then we look much thinner. But I mention this because there's become a whole art now of curating something that I know isn't true. I know I'm miserable. I know that what I've posted is just a curated identity. But here's where it becomes really difficult. I then go online, and what I see is everyone else's curated identities. But I forget that I've done the same thing. And what I think is, oh my God, everyone is happy but me. Everyone is successful but me. Everyone is having beach vacations with their perfect family but me. And now, not only do I feel worse, but I feel alone and I feel shamed. Because now my entire world is a world of people who also have created fake curated identities, but I'm judging my real self by their curated self. Forgetting that I also have this fake self that I've put out there. And this has become an incredible epidemic. The rates of teenage depression and suicide are directly linked. I forget the numbers at the moment, but literally if you plot them on a graph, they are directly linked to the use of smartphones and social media and the number of hours per day used. a direct link in youth and adolescence, especially. Direct link to smartphones and spike of suicides. And so what I would suggest, number one, and this is true not just for young people, but for anybody. First cure for depression, get off social media. Seriously. Or limit it to such an extent that you're just maybe messaging friends or staying in touch with people who actually love you, like people you really know. Real friends. Help her get off social media. Help her find a sense of who she is that has nothing to do with what she does. So if she says to you, I'm depressed because my schoolwork is hard, instead of helping her only figure out how to get help with her schoolwork, help her understand that even if she failed out of school, she still is worthy of occupying her place on planet Earth. Because a lot of times in our best effort to help people, we actually plug right into the problem. Oh my God, I'm so depressed. Look at how fat I am. I cannot believe I've gained so much weight. I'm miserable. I hate myself. And what we get back is, oh, well, don't worry. I'll help you diet. Don't worry. There's this great diet I know it can help you. And we say it thinking it's helping, but actually it plugs straight back into the problem, which is, yeah, you should be miserable at being that fat. Yes, you will be more worthy if you were thin. And the same thing with youth. I'm depressed because, oh my God, this in my classes, this in my school. Help her with that. Sure, sit her down, help her figure out how to manage classes. But more important than that, help her understand that even if she dropped out of college, it doesn't change her worthiness as a human being. It doesn't change her ability to find and give love. It doesn't change her ability to connect with, be an instrument of, a vehicle of, a transmitter of God's love. Help her understand that first. Because then it won't be something that feels better just until she fails an exam. And that's the first thing I would do, is help her find people, things, a connection within the self. You don't have to make it deeply religious or spiritual. Sometimes it's hard with young people. But help her surround herself with people who love her for who she is. Help her understand, and the last piece that I would say about this is get her involved in some kind of volunteer work. Because there is nothing that helps us understand our worthiness as a being, as well as the abundance in which we live, as helping those who have less. Now, as a student, you may not have a lot of time. That's okay. Let her go volunteer on, the pediatric cancer ward at a hospital once a week. Let her color with kids, read to kids, play games with kids. Let her read to blind people. Let her go visit a senior citizen home. Let her go and help, battered women. Go paint a battered women's shelter. Whatever it may be, whatever interests her. Plant trees for tree people. Whatever it may be. But do something. Work at an animal shelter. Something that A, makes her know how much she has. That just who she is, even with no skills, but just the love in her heart, how healing that is for others. She'll know that, and what she'll understand immediately is how fortunate and blessed she is. Start with that. In the world that she's in. And again, I'm glad to know she's on medicine. Make sure she's also getting someone who's ensuring that she stays safe and alive while she does the rest of the work. Yes. Wonderful. Okay, last question. Yes. We'll take yours first tomorrow. Yes.
So in Vedanta they say when we sleep, we don't have any smriti, memories, thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So which I agree to when we say, okay, I had a good dream, I had a good sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Then we don't have any thoughts. But when we have a dream, is it considered to be a thought?
Okay. So, yes, a dream is, of course, an active part of the mind. Whether we call it a thought, whether we call it the workings of our subconscious mind, I'm not worried about the semantics. What matters here in terms of when you're speaking about the stages of sleep, the stages of consciousness, is that which makes it a good sleep is that dreamless state. And we know that biologically and neurologically as well, that the deep sleep, the non-REM sleep, REM sleep is when we're dreaming, non-REM is when we're not dreaming. The non-REM sleep is actually when our body restores itself. And there's a lot on the circadian rhythms of that. I won't go into that tonight, but we've done that in here before, so you could find videos of the past when we've gone into the hours of the night, when to sleep, when to wake. But for here, what's important is just to know that being thoughtless, having the still mind, is not only restorative for the mind and the heart and the spiritual progress, but it's actually restorative for the body as well, which to me is very interesting, that the state of mind, the dreamless sleep, is that when our body repairs itself, and the thoughtless mind of being awake is when our internal self repairs itself, not the physical body, but the internal self, the mind, the heart, the spiritual aspect, the subtle body, all of that repairs itself. Dreams, thoughts, they're workings of the subconscious, sometimes the conscious. There's nothing wrong with them. They fulfill different roles. Thoughts are, of course, very beneficial. We couldn't function in the world if we didn't have a thought. If when I was crossing the street and I see a car coming at 80 miles an hour, I didn't have a thought that says, I think I should stop, I wouldn't last very long. And just Darwinianly, I would not last long enough to reproduce if I didn't have a thought that said, get out of the way of that oncoming car or charging tiger. If I didn't have a thought that says, probably I'm going to be hungry in the evening, I should make sure I've got some food. Again, I wouldn't last long enough to reproduce. So thoughts are very beneficial in the logistic way of our life. Thoughts also, interestingly, are what bring us onto the spiritual path, right? Jnana Yoga, of which Vedanta is a strong aspect, is the path of union with God, enlightenment, through wisdom, through contemplation. So our thoughts are actually taking us into it. The thought, I am not my body, is the thought that if I follow it long enough, takes me into the experience of who I am, takes me into God consciousness. So thoughts are not the enemies. The problem becomes when the thoughts become the master and we become the slave. When thoughts just grab us. I always say thoughts are tickets. If you wanted to go someplace and you walked into an airport or a train station and you said, I'd like a first class ticket. Well, what's the first thing they're going to ask you? Can you pay for it? Well, yeah, of course you've got to pay for it. But what are they going to ask you even before they can charge you? They can't even tell you how much it's going to cost. What's the first question? Where are you going? Yeah, where are you going to go? Ticket where to? Nobody can sell you a ticket if you don't know where you want to go. And none of us would get on a vehicle. I mean, you would never show up at an airport and say, I don't know, what's leaving in the next hour? Which one has nice movies? Which one has nice food? You would never do that. There's no way a ticket agent could sell you a ticket by saying, this plane, the best plane. It's a gorgeous plane. Seats are really comfortable. You'd say, but where is it going? And if it's not going where you want to go, it doesn't matter how nice the flight is. You wouldn't sit on it. But we jump on these thought trains absolutely unconsciously. Thought comes, jealousy, judgment, criticism, negativity, expectation, whatever it may be. And we just jump on it. And then we wind up in misery, in depression, and we wonder why. How did I get here? Well, if you're prepared to hop into any car that goes by, to get on any plane, any train, you're going to end up in a lot of places you don't want to be. But you have control over it. And that's the issue with thoughts, is how can I use them? Like a plane, like a car, like a train, it's a useful vehicle. But I need to use it rather than letting it use me. And the practice of a thoughtless mind, of a still mind, gives us the experience of the self that then is able to use my thoughts later on. Until I know who I am without thoughts, until I know who is the self between thoughts, I'm not able to get any control of my thoughts. There has to be a self who knows where I want to go, who understands that I'm not my thoughts. And until I have that experience, I'm at the mercy of them. And so, yes, dreams work out our subconscious, okay. They serve a purpose if you're into, Jungian psychology and a lot of other forms that enable us to analyze our dreams and know things about ourselves based on them. But ultimately, if you're looking to repair the body, you need the dreamless sleep. In the same way, our thoughts are very useful. But ultimately, if what I'm looking for is to experience the soul, the self, I need to be able to find the space between the thoughts. I need to be able to get myself to know who am I that isn't the thought. And then I can go back and use my mind as a tool rather than being the slave of it. We will start with yours tomorrow. Wonderful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. And we'll see you tomorrow.